should shed the winds better. Teepees are famous or well known to withstand good winds if you stake them down properly, and if you do proper care on them and stuff. But he does the 4-pole versus the 3-pole, and his logic is pretty much there. However, the problem with Jonathan Hughes is he starts his journey with the Mandan and Hidatsa and, I forget who the third group was, up in North Dakota, who lived on the edge of the plains in earth lodges, and then as they ventured out to hunt the buffalo, would use teepee-type lodges to nomadically travel to hunt the buffalo until they come back to their winter camps. And he starts there because that's pretty much where Lewis and Clark first hit, which was about 1803. Okay, so he starts his teepee research with 1803, and he ends up going out to the Blackfoot in Alberta, Canada, but he fails to understand, or fails to. I guess he just didn't know. I don't know why. He's a busy, smart guy, but the Spanish people first ran into the teepees in the Southwest, New Mexico, Texas, in 1530, 300 years before. 300 years before, there's already mention in people's Spanish journals. Oh, my phone is starting to flicker. Anyway, so there's 300 years that he misses out on. And what happens in those 300 years, see, teepees are first, everybody knows this, right? Teepees are first small because dogs drag the poles and humans drag the poles. And later, when the Spanish lost a bunch of horses, they start going out in the plains, and the different tribes start picking up on the horses, and it starts in the South. The Apache and Comanche and Kiowa pick up on the horses. And as they do that, their teepees get larger. By the time Lewis and Clark are up in 1803, up in the crossing the plains up there with the Cheyenne and the Lakota and the Crow and stuff, there's already huge teepees because the horses have already gotten, in 300 years, they've already gotten up into Alberta, Canada. And so now the plains is open, an open territory. Before, the plains was kind of like a desert. It was hard to cross. Unless you followed a river, you just didn't set out across the Great Plains. There was really nothing there. 3 types of short grass, short, medium, and long. And the long is towards the east where the woodlands are, and it gets shorter and shorter as you get towards the mountains. So anyway, the diffusion of the horse is going up, and then the diffusion of the rifles and guns, mainly from the French fur traders, coming down from the north, and they meet in the plains. And the buffalo culture is about, at the most, the big teepee buffalo culture is about 150 years. Pretty much ends in 1880, but there's some hang-ons into the early 1900s. But so in the late 1700s is pretty much when the big teepee culture starts, before Lewis and Clark get there. And actually the Spanish they took over the Southwest, but they didn't really, although they did travel up into other places, up into the Great Plains and even up in the Mississippi River and stuff. They never really permanently stayed up there. They centered more down into Mexico, Central America, and South America. So we didn't get that big long-term Spanish influence. We got more of a French influence in the Louisiana, St. Louis on out territory than we did Spanish. So, okay, so the other big thing that happened was teepees were made out of animal hides, buffalo, elk, reindeer, deer. Later, actually, when cow hides were used later on as the settlers started coming in with their cattle and stuff. And but then the canvas came along, and so the canvas became the standard teepee in the 1800s. Like the early 1800s to the late 1800s, this is what we come up with as a standard stereotypical teepee, okay? It's not all what you think it is. It is more to it than what people believe. Now, it is true, and I've seen several pretty knowledgeable people on YouTube that, well, particularly, let's say how to set up a Cree teepee, or how to set up a Crow teepee, or a Lakota teepee. Well, specifically, they'll sometimes often say, "This is what I was taught. This is what I know." Then there's people that come along and in the comments and say, "That's not how it's done." Well, there's different traditions. There's different doors. There's different the tripod versus the quadrupod. They're tied differently, and they're not all the quadrupod tribes. They don't tie all their quadrupod poles together in the same manner. There's different ways to tie poles. There's different ways to tie a tripod. You can do this wrap and frap, or you can do clove hitch and stuff. There's all kinds of different ways to tie to make things up. Then there's this way where some of the nations, some of the tribes and nations, when they added in a pole, they walked around with the rope that tied up the tripod or the quadrupod. It would be a long length left over. They'd add in a pole, and some tribes would walk around, and then they'd add in another pole, and they'd walk around and tie that one in, and they put the poles in a spiral order. Some of them went, one of the other contentions is you're supposed to go clockwise with the sun. Well, not all tribes did that. Some tribes went counterclockwise when they took the rope around. All right? Many tribes faced their teepees east, but some did not. Some faced them south. And some, because it depends on where you are geographically and what the weather is. And some of them face them every which way but loose, depending on the convenience of camping along a river and ice. You can dispense with a lot of the formalities and ritual things. Camping out in the middle of the Great Plains, maybe it's smart to put them in a big circle. Depends on if a bunch of different tribes are coming together to have a big powwow, a big ceremony, a big meeting, a big rendezvous. They might set up in their own little group. Sometimes tribes that use clans a certain clan had a different position to set up amongst the whole village. There's all kinds of different things. Doors. Holy mackerel. Doors can be round. Doors can be just the bottom opened up. Doors can be a big U-shaped opening. You can hang a door on the outside, hang it from the inside to the outside. I mean, you can turn it, put sticks in it, pull it out sideways like a hinge door, or roll it up on top. There's all kinds of different ways to put a door on a teepee. What else is different about, the smoke flaps, okay? Sometimes at the bottom of the smoke flap, sometimes they were left loose. Sometimes they were added onto ropes and then helped to tie to secure down to the ground. The tops of the smoke flaps, where the smoke flap pole was put into, often was a pocket, but sometimes it was a hole where the stick went through the hole, and they would tie a little cross piece on the top to stop the smoke flap pole from shooting through. Sometimes there was rope tied on the top of the smoke flap, and that rope was tied to the poles, or the pole was looped into the pole was pushed into a loop to hold up the smoke flap so that they could be turned this way and that. Some people